The night was heavy with silence. Only the sound of broken branches and hurried footsteps echoed through the alien forest. The tall trees stood like dark giants, their twisted branches hiding the pale glow of two moons. In the middle of this forest, a mother alien stumbled forward, holding the small hand of her daughter. Her chest rose and fell with sharp breaths, and her skin carried the marks of battle. Cuts, bruises, and one deep wound across her side. Behind them, cruel voices shouted. The enemies were close. Sharp arrows flew through the air, their tips shining in the moonlight. The mother turned, her long cloak sweeping around her. She pushed her daughter behind her body and raised her arms. One arrow flew straight toward the child. Without thinking, the mother stepped in front of it. The arrow struck her shoulder. Pain spread like fire, but she did not fall. She stood tall, protecting the little one. Her voice broke the silence of the forest. She screamed for help, loud, desperate, full of fear. But she already knew. No one was out here. No one would hear her. Or so she thought. The forest stirred. Somewhere in the darkness a shadow moved. At first it looked like another enemy, another figure hunting them. But then the shadow stepped into the pale light of the moons. It was not like the others. His form was strange, unfamiliar. His skin was different. His eyes were sharp, alert. He was human. The mother froze. Her people spoke stories of humans, dangerous, unpredictable, survivors from another world. They were rare, almost myths. Some said humans were violent creatures. Others said they were clever protectors, but never had she seen one with her own eyes. And now, in the middle of her suffering, one stood before her. The human did not speak at first. He simply looked at the mother and her child. His expression was calm, but his body was ready, like a hunter who had seen prey. Then he moved fast. Too fast for the attackers. He pulled a strange weapon from his side. It was not a blade, not a bow, but something that hummed with quiet power. The first attacker rushed forward, raising his spear. The human stepped aside with simple grace, striking the enemy in the chest with his weapon. A burst of light pushed the attacker back, sending him crashing into the trees. The others hesitated, confused by this new warrior. The mother watched in disbelief. Her knees shook, but not from pain. It was shock. Her daughter, wide-eyed, whispered softly, "Who is he?" But the mother had no answer. The human stood between them and the attackers now. He raised his weapon again, his movements quick, sharp, full of control. Another arrow cut through the air toward him. He caught it mid-flight. With one swift motion, he snapped it in half and dropped it to the ground. The attackers cried out in frustration. They had never faced such a fighter. One by one, he struck them down. Not with endless rage, but with careful strength. Every move was precise. Every strike was final. The forest filled with the sounds of battle, shouts, crashes, the sharp hum of his weapon. And then silence. The attackers, broken and afraid, retreated into the darkness, leaving only the mother, her daughter, and the stranger. For a moment, no one moved. The mother kept her child close, her body trembling. The human slowly lowered his weapon. His breathing was steady, his face unreadable. He looked at them with calm eyes, as if deciding whether to stay or leave. The forest was quiet again, but the air was full of questions. The daughter stepped forward, curious and unafraid. Her small voice broke the silence. "You saved us," she whispered. The human glanced down at her, his face softening for just a second. He nodded once. No words, only a nod. The mother pulled her daughter back. She still did not trust him. Her voice was sharp, even through the pain. Why help us?" The human did not answer. Instead, he moved closer. The mother raised her arm, weak but ready to fight. But the human only knelt down. From his pack, he pulled out a small container of water. He placed it gently on the ground in front of her. Then he pulled out a strip of cloth and held it toward her wound. The mother's eyes widened. He was helping her, not attacking, not capturing, helping. Still, her heart beat fast with fear. Could she trust him? Was this kindness or some hidden trap? She did not know. But her daughter smiled, her small hands reaching for the water. She drank quickly, her face full of relief. Then she looked at her mother and whispered, "He is good." The mother looked at the stranger again. His face was hard, marked by years of struggle. His eyes carried both pain and strength. He had the look of someone who had lived too long in shadows. The forest around them grew quiet. The danger had passed, but a new mystery had arrived. A human, standing where no human should be. A human who had saved them without reason. The mother whispered softly, almost to herself. A stranger. Or a savior. The human said nothing. He only looked at the stars above the trees as if searching for an answer he himself did not know. The forest was still. Only the sound of the mother's heavy breathing and the soft cries of her daughter filled the night air. The attackers were gone, their footsteps fading into the distance. But now another danger stood before them. Not an arrow, not a spear, but a man. A human. The mother held her daughter close, her wounded arm pressed tight against her body. Blood still flowed, warm and heavy. The cloth the human had placed near her feet was untouched. She did not want to take it. She could not. Her people had told her stories of humans. They were clever, yes. Brave, yes. But also dangerous. Humans survived in ways others could not. Sometimes they helped. Sometimes they destroyed. No one could ever be sure which one they would be. The human knelt down in the dirt. He did not speak. His hands moved calmly as if he had done this before. He dipped the cloth in water and held it out again. His eyes met hers. There was no threat in them, but there was no softness either. They were sharp eyes, watchful, careful, like a hunter who never sleeps. The mother's breath caught. Could she trust him? Her mind screamed no, but her daughter's hand slipped from her grasp. The little girl walked forward, fearless, her small steps crunching against the leaves. She picked up the cloth from his hand, smiling as if she already knew the answer to the question her mother feared to ask. He is helping us, the child whispered. Her voice was soft, but it carried through the silence like a blade. The mother's chest tightened. She wanted to pull her daughter back to keep her safe, but her strength was fading. Her knees trembled. At last she sat down on a fallen tree, her eyes still fixed on the stranger. The human moved closer, but slowly, with care. He pressed the cloth against her wound. Pain shot through her shoulder, sharp and burning. She gasped, but he did not stop. His hands were steady, his focus unbroken. She watched his face. There was no joy, no cruelty, only focus. Only duty. For a long time, no one spoke. The forest whispered around them, the rustle of leaves, the distant call of a night beast, the slow breath of wind. Finally, the mother asked, her voice weak, "Why? Why save us?" The human paused. He looked at her, then at the girl. His lips parted as if to speak, but no words came. Instead, he tightened the bandage around her wound and stepped back. He gave no answer. The mother's suspicion grew. Silence was as dangerous as a weapon. What if this was only the beginning of a trap? What if he wanted something in return? But her daughter's eyes shone with trust. She reached out and took the human's hand, her small fingers curling around his. For the first time, his expression changed. His eyes softened, his face showing something almost hidden. Loneliness. He squeezed her hand gently before letting go. The mother's heart twisted. She did not know who this man was, but she could see one truth. He was alone. Alone in this cruel forest. Alone in this world. The human stood and looked around. His head tilted as if listening to something far away. Then he turned to them and made a simple gesture, his hand moving toward the path ahead. It was clear. He wanted them to follow. The mother hesitated. Every part of her body told her to refuse, to stay, to hide, to protect her daughter. But she was weak. Her wound would not heal by itself. Without help, she would not last until sunrise. Her daughter tugged at her cloak. "Please," the little one whispered. "We can trust him." Trust. The word burned in her chest. Could she really? The human began walking. His steps were silent, steady, like water flowing over stone. He did not look back, but he slowed, waiting for them. At last, the mother rose. Her body ached, her blood still warm against the bandage, but she followed. Her daughter held her hand tight as they walked behind the stranger. The path was narrow and dark. Strange eyes blinked from the shadows, watching them pass. The forest was full of danger, yet the human moved without fear. Every time a sound came, a branch breaking, a growl in the distance, he stopped, listening, ready to fight. His hand never strayed far from his weapon. The mother watched him carefully. His movements were not wild. They were controlled. He fought like someone who had been hunted many times and had learned never to waste a single step. He was not just surviving. He was protecting still, her doubts whispered. Why them? Why now? What if tomorrow he turned his weapon on them instead of their enemies? The night stretched on, heavy with questions. Finally, they reached a small clearing. The human stopped. He set down his pack and began to build a fire with swift, practiced hands. The flames grew, pushing back the shadows. For the first time, warmth touched their faces. The mother sat close, holding her daughter, her eyes never leaving the human. He sat across from them, silent, his face lit by firelight. The flames danced in his eyes, revealing something hidden deep inside, memories perhaps, or pain. The daughter, brave and innocent, smiled at him. "Thank you," she said softly. The human nodded once. Still no words, the mother felt torn. Part of her wanted to sleep, to close her eyes and believe they were safe. But another part of her stayed awake, watching the stranger. Trust or trap, only time would tell. The fire had burned low. Only red coals glowed in the circle of stones. The forest around them was quiet but not safe. In the distance, strange cries echoed, long, mournful sounds from beasts that hunted the night. The mother held her daughter close, her eyes heavy but unwilling to close. Across from her, the human sat with his back straight, his weapon resting on his knees. He did not sleep. His eyes searched the shadows as if danger lived in every leaf, every branch, every whisper of wind. When morning came, pale light slipped through the twisted branches above. The air was cold, damp with mist. The human stood and packed his things quickly. His movements were sharp and exact, like someone who had lived a long time without rest. He looked at the mother, then at the path leading deeper into the forest. His hand made a short, clear motion. "Follow me." The mother's wound ached, but the bandage he had tied held firm. She rose slowly, helping her daughter to her feet. The girl's eyes sparkled with excitement, not fear. To her, this strange man was not a threat. He was a hero. She held his hand as they began to walk, her small steps quick to match his longer stride. The mother followed behind, watching them both. Doubt still gnawed at her heart. She wanted to believe he meant no harm, but trust was a fragile thing. One mistake could cost them everything. The forest path was narrow, twisting between roots as thick as walls. Strange plants glowed faintly in the shadows, their blue light pulsing like heartbeats. Birds with silver feathers leapt from branch to branch, their cries sharp as metal. The air smelled of damp earth and hidden danger. Every time the undergrowth rustled, the human stopped. His hand would slide toward his weapon. His eyes, sharp and alert, scanned the trees. More than once, the mother saw dark shapes moving in the distance, eyes reflecting light. But none dared come close. The human walked with the quiet confidence of a predator. He was not prey, not anymore. The daughter asked questions as they walked. "Where are we going?" No answer. Only silence. "Do you have a name?" The human looked at her, his face unreadable. Then he shook his head just once. "Why do you not speak?" He paused, then placed a finger against his lips. A signal. Quiet. The girl giggled softly but obeyed. She liked his silence. It made him seem mysterious, like the heroes from her stories. The mother, however, felt a heavy unease. A man with no name, no voice, and no reason to help them. Such a man was a puzzle. And puzzles could be dangerous. Hours passed. The sun climbed higher, its light slipping through the forest canopy in broken rays. Sweat ran down the mother's face, her wound throbbing with each step. At last her legs trembled and she fell against a tree. The human stopped immediately. He came back and knelt beside her, his brow furrowing as he checked the bandage. Without a word, he pulled a small vial from his pack. Inside was a glowing liquid, pale green like captured starlight. The mother stared at it, suspicion flashing in her eyes. "What is that?" she whispered. He did not answer. He only held it out. She hesitated, fear battling against need. But her daughter's voice broke through her thoughts. "Mother, please. You need it." Her lips tightened. At last she took the vial. The liquid was bitter, sharp on her tongue, but warmth spread through her body, steady and strong. The pain dulled. Her strength returned. She could stand again. The human gave a single nod, then turned and began walking once more. The mother's heart was heavy. He had saved her life again. Yet the question remained, why? As the day stretched on, the forest changed. The trees grew wider, their trunks hollow like caves. Strange creatures with glowing eyes watched from the shadows. Once a beast leapt from the branches above, its jaws wide, teeth like knives. The daughter screamed. The human moved faster than thought. His weapon flashed with light, striking the creature mid-air. It fell lifeless at their feet, its body smoking. The human stood over it, silent, breathing slow. He looked at the girl, then at the mother. His eyes held no pride, no triumph. only the calm of someone who had done this many times before. The girl ran to him, her small arms wrapping around his leg. "You saved us again," she cried. The mother watched, her chest tight. This stranger had risked himself for them twice now, yet he asked for nothing. No food, no shelter, no thanks, nothing. That night they stopped near a stream. The water sparkled in the moonlight, cold and clean. The human built another fire, his hands moving with quiet skill. The girl sat beside him, laughing softly as she tried to copy his work with small sticks. For the first time, he let a faint smile touch his lips. The mother saw it. It was quick, almost hidden, but it was real. A human smile, tired, lonely, but real. When the girl finally slept, curled against her mother's side, the woman looked across the fire at the stranger. Her voice was low, almost a whisper. "You could have left us. You could have walked away, but you didn't. Why?" For a long time, he was silent. The flames danced in his eyes. Then in a voice rough and quiet, he spoke for the first time. "Because no one saved me." The mother's breath caught. His voice was heavy with pain, but also truth. She realized then he was not just protecting them. He was protecting what he had once lost. The fire crackled. The forest whispered. And the journey continued. The night was quiet except for the soft crackle of the fire. The flames painted shadows on the trees, long and thin like dark fingers reaching across the ground. The daughter slept soundly, her small head resting on her mother's lap. The mother sat awake, her golden eyes fixed on the stranger across from her. The human stared into the fire, his face still, his eyes distant. He had spoken only once since they met, and those words had cut deeper than any blade. "Because no one saved me." The mother replayed them in her mind again and again. What had he meant? What past did he carry? And why did he choose to help her and her daughter, when his own heart carried such weight? The silence between them was heavy. Finally the mother broke it. "You are not from here." The human's eyes lifted, meeting hers across the fire. He said nothing, but the truth was already there. His body, his eyes, his silence, they did not belong to this world. "You were left behind, weren't you?" She pressed, her voice low but steady. "Stranded, alone." He shifted slightly, his jaw tightening. For a moment she thought he would remain silent, as he always did. But then, his rough voice came again, slow and heavy. "Yes." Only one word, but it was enough. The mother leaned closer, careful not to wake her daughter. "How long?" The human looked up at the sky. The moon shone brightly, pale light touching his face. His eyes carried years of pain, years of silence. Finally he answered, "Too long." The mother's heart tightened. She could see the truth in his face. The scars on his arms, the weary lines etched deep into his skin. This was not the face of someone who had lived with comfort. This was the face of survival. The daughter stirred in her sleep, mumbling softly before curling closer into her mother's cloak. The human's eyes softened for just a moment as he watched her. That tiny spark of warmth told the mother more than his words ever could. "You were hunted," she said quietly, "just as we are hunted now." He nodded once. "And yet you survived." This time his answer came not with words but with the smallest of smiles. Tired, broken, but real. The mother fell silent. For the first time she saw him not only as a stranger, not only as a savior, but as something else, a reflection. She too had lost much. She too had lived in fear, carrying the weight of survival on her shoulders. Perhaps in some strange way they were not so different. The fire burned lower, but the conversation hung in the air, fragile and raw. The mother finally asked the question she had feared most. "Why us? You could have let us die and no one would have known. Why choose to help?" The human's eyes locked on hers. His voice, though quiet, carried weight. "Because I remember what it feels like to scream, and no one comes." The mother looked down, her chest tight. She remembered her own scream in the forest, the desperation, the hopelessness. He had heard it. And unlike everyone else, he had answered. For a long while, neither of them spoke again. The only sound was the forest breathing around them, the distant howl of beasts, the whisper of wind through leaves. The human leaned back, his eyes drifting upward to the stars. The mother followed his gaze. The sky stretched endlessly above them, filled with thousands of bright points. To her people, the stars were old guardians, watching, guiding. But to him, they must have been cruel reminders. Each star another world, another home, and none of them his. She wondered how long he had been looking at them, searching for a way back. At last, the fire faded to glowing embers. The human rose, his movements silent. He picked up his weapon and stood watch at the edge of the clearing. His back was straight, his figure strong, like a sentinel carved from stone. The mother lay down beside her daughter, but sleep did not come easily. Her mind spun with questions, with fear, with a strange new understanding. This man was more than a fighter, more than a survivor. He was a ghost of a forgotten story, carrying secrets too heavy for words, and yet he had chosen to stand with them. By morning, the forest was alive again. Birds sang from the branches, their silver feathers catching the sunlight. The human had not slept at all. His eyes were tired but sharp. He gestured for them to move. As they walked, the mother kept close behind him, her thoughts restless. She could no longer see him as only a stranger. He was too human for that, and yet he was too broken to be only a savior. The daughter skipped ahead, her small hand reaching for his once more. He let her hold it, his large hand closing gently around hers. For the first time in years, the little girl laughed without fear. The mother watched, her chest heavy with a new kind of fear. Trust was forming between them. Trust was dangerous because hidden inside every savior, there is always a story. And sometimes hidden truths are the sharpest blades of all. The sun dipped low, painting the forest in shades of gold and shadow. The path grew darker as the three travelers moved deeper between the towering trees. The mother walked slowly, her wound healing but still sore. The daughter stayed close to the human, her small fingers wrapped around his hand. She trusted him completely now, laughing softly at every step, as if danger had vanished from the world. But the mother knew better. Danger never vanished, it only waited. The human walked ahead, silent as always, but his eyes scanned the forest like a hawk. His shoulders were tense, his weapon always within reach. He could feel it. Something in the air had changed. The silence of the forest was no longer peaceful. It was heavy, watching, waiting. When night finally came, they stopped in a clearing surrounded by black stone pillars that rose from the earth like broken teeth. The human built a fire quickly. The flames pushed back the shadows, but even the light seemed nervous here. The mother sat close to her daughter, her eyes shifting uneasily. She could feel it too. The forest was not empty. Something moved in the dark, circling, and then it happened. From the shadows came the sound of a horn, low, cruel, and echoing. The mother's blood ran cold. She knew that sound. Their hunters had returned. Figures emerged from the trees one after another, their armor glinting faintly in the firelight. This time there were more, twice as many as before, maybe 3 times. They carried spears, bows, and cruel blades that shimmered with poison. Their leader stepped forward, tall and armored in dark iron. His voice rang out across the clearing. "You cannot run forever, alien witch. Give us the girl, or bleed tonight." The mother pulled her daughter closer, trembling. Her eyes burned with defiance, but her body was weak. She could not fight them alone. She knew it, but she was not alone. The human stepped forward, standing between the hunters and the mother. His face was calm, but his eyes burned like fire. He raised his weapon slowly, its strange hum cutting through the night air. The hunters laughed. "A human here? Do you think you can save them, wanderer? You will die like the rest." The human said nothing. The attack came fast. Arrows shot through the air like black rain. The human moved, his body a blur. He blocked, dodged, and deflected. One arrow missed him and flew straight toward the mother. She braced for pain, but the human was faster. He turned, caught the arrow mid-flight, and snapped it in half before it could reach her. Then he struck back. His weapon pulsed with light, each strike sending enemies crashing into the dirt. He fought with precision. Every move measured, every step placed with purpose. He was not just surviving now, he was protecting. The mother watched in awe, her fear mixing with hope. Her daughter's eyes were wide, shining in the firelight, but the hunters did not stop. They came in waves, shouting, screaming, their blades flashing. The human took hits, his body slashed by steel, but he did not falter. His blood stained the ground, but still he stood tall. The leader charged, his massive blade aimed straight for the human. The ground shook with each of his steps. Their weapons clashed, sparks flying. The leader was strong, his strikes heavy, but the human's movements were sharp and quick. He fought like a man who had danced with death too many times. Still, the leader pressed harder. Blow after blow drove the human back. The mother's heart raced. For the first time, she saw fear flicker in the stranger's eyes. He could not hold forever. The daughter cried out, "Don't stop. Please don't stop." Her voice cut through the chaos like a blade. The human's eyes met hers for only a second, but that second was enough. Strength surged back into his body. With a roar, he twisted, disarmed the leader, and struck him to the ground. The remaining hunters hesitated, their leader broken before them. The human turned, his weapon glowing bright, his face lit with fury. The hunters stepped back, fear replacing their courage. One by one they fled into the trees, their cries fading into the night. The clearing fell silent once more. Only the sound of heavy breathing remained. The human stood still, his weapon lowered. Blood dripped from his wounds, his body trembling with exhaustion. Yet he did not fall. His eyes scanned the forest one last time, ensuring no more enemies lurked nearby. The mother rushed to his side, her hands shaking as she tried to check his wounds. "You're hurt," she whispered, but he only shook his head, his lips pressed tight. His gaze moved to the daughter, who ran forward and wrapped her arms around him. "You saved us again," she cried, tears shining in her eyes. The human placed a hand gently on her head. His eyes softened. He said nothing, but his silence carried more weight than words. The mother looked at him, her suspicion finally cracking. She had doubted him, feared him, questioned him, but tonight he had stood against an army to protect them. He was no stranger now. He was their shield. Yet as she looked into his eyes, she saw something else, a shadow deeper than the night. The battle was not over. This attack was only the beginning, and she feared the next storm would be far worse. The clearing smelled of smoke, blood, and broken earth. The fire had nearly burned out, its last embers glowing weakly. The bodies of the fallen hunters lay scattered among the black stones, their weapons cracked, their faces frozen in silence. The mother sat on the ground, her daughter clinging tightly to her side. She could still hear the clash of steel, the screams, the roar of battle echoing in her head. Her heart pounded, but the fight was over. They were alive. The human stood in the center of the clearing. His chest rose and fell with heavy breaths. Blood ran down his arms, staining the dirt at his feet, but his eyes remained sharp. He did not celebrate victory. He did not relax. He stood like a statue carved from stone, scanning the shadows, waiting for more enemies. The mother's voice broke the silence. Soft, uncertain. "It's finished." The human turned his head slightly, his expression unreadable. He said nothing. Instead, he slowly lowered his weapon, its glow fading until it was only metal again. He staggered once, his knees nearly buckling, but he forced himself to stand straight. The daughter ran to him before her mother could stop her. She wrapped her small arms around his waist, pressing her face against him. Her voice shook with both fear and relief. "You didn't let them take us. You didn't let them hurt us." The human looked down at her. For a moment, his eyes softened, and his hand rested gently on her hair. He still said nothing, but the silence itself felt like a promise. The mother walked closer, her steps unsteady. She had doubted him since the moment he appeared, but tonight had burned away much of that doubt. Still, trust was a heavy thing. She looked at him, at his wounds, at the way he stood guard even when he could barely stand. "You are hurt," she said quietly. "Sit. Let me help." The human hesitated, his eyes narrowing as if weighing whether to trust her. Then slowly he sank to one knee. The mother tore a strip of her cloak and pressed it against his bleeding arm. He winced but made no sound. As she worked, her daughter stayed close to him, refusing to let go of his hand. The mother glanced at the little girl, then at the human. She realized something then. Her daughter had already made her choice. She trusted him fully, without fear, without hesitation. When the wounds were bound, the human leaned back against one of the stone pillars. His breathing slowed, though his eyes never closed. He stared at the fire, but his mind was far away, lost in memories only he carried. The mother broke the silence again. "They will come back," she whispered. The human's head turned slightly, his eyes meeting hers. He gave one single nod. "Yes, and next time," her voice faltered, "next time there will be more." He did not deny it. He did not speak comfort. The truth lay heavy in the air. The hunters would return, stronger, angrier. The daughter curled up beside him, her small frame resting against his side. The human's arm moved almost without thought, protecting her even as he rested. The mother watched the two of them, her heart conflicted. This man was no longer just a stranger, no longer just a protector. He was becoming something else, something she had not dared hope for. An ally, a guardian, perhaps even family, but family came with risk. As the night grew colder, the mother whispered softly, more to herself than to him, "If you stay with us, they will never stop. You know that, don't you?" The human's eyes lifted to the stars. For a long moment he said nothing. Then, in his low, rough voice, he spoke. "They never stopped for me." The mother froze, her breath catching. The weight of his words sank into her bones. He had lived this life for so long, hunted, alone, fighting without end. Now, by saving them, he had chosen to carry their burden too. The silence stretched. The fire flickered weakly, shadows dancing around them. At last, the mother sat down beside him. She pulled her daughter into her lap, but her eyes stayed fixed on the human. "You could walk away," she said quietly. "You owe us nothing. Yet you stay, why?" The human's gaze returned to her. For a heartbeat, she thought he would say nothing, as always. But then his voice came low but steady. "Because you screamed." Her eyes widened. "You screamed," he repeated, his voice softer now. "And I remembered what it felt like to scream and be unheard. I couldn't let it happen again." The mother's throat tightened. She looked away, blinking back tears. She had thought of him as a weapon, a wall, a nameless protector. But now she saw something deeper. He was not saving only them. He was saving himself, piece by piece, through them. The daughter stirred in her sleep, her small hand still gripping his. The human did not move it away. Instead, he let it stay, his eyes softening as he looked at her. The mother finally whispered, "Then perhaps you are not our shield. Perhaps you are our voice, the one who answers when no one else will." The human said nothing more. He simply leaned back, his gaze drifting once again to the endless stars. But for the first time in years, he did not look at them with loneliness. He looked at them with hope. The night slowly faded. The stars dimmed as the first light of dawn spread across the alien sky. 2 suns rose, casting a pale gold glow over the forest. The long shadows of trees stretched across the ground like watchful spirits. The mother stirred awake. Her body ached, but her wounds were bound. Her daughter was curled beside her, safe, breathing softly. For the first time in many days, she felt warmth in her heart. They had survived another night. The human was already awake, standing at the edge of the clearing. His figure was outlined against the rising suns, tall and still. His weapon rested on his back, but his hand never strayed far from it. He was always ready, always alert. The mother rose quietly and joined him. For a while they stood together in silence, watching the light break through the trees. The air was fresh, filled with the songs of strange birds. But beneath the beauty she felt the truth. This peace was fragile. "They will come again," she whispered. The human's head tilted slightly. His eyes stayed on the horizon. "Yes." The word was soft but certain. "And when they come," she said, her voice heavy with worry, "there may be too many, even for you." He finally looked at her. His eyes carried the same fire she had seen in the battle, the same weight of scars and years. "Then I will stand until I fall." The mother's chest tightened. She had heard warriors speak with pride before, but his voice was different. There was no pride, no boasting, only truth. She lowered her eyes, her hand brushing over her daughter's hair. "And what of her? If we fall, who will carry her?" The human turned his gaze to the little girl. She had woken and was watching them with bright, curious eyes. When she saw him looking, she smiled and ran to his side. She slipped her small hand into his. "You will," the girl said softly. The human froze, his lips parting as if words might come, but none did. His silence was enough. The mother felt her heart ache. Her daughter had given him a place in their lives, a place he had never asked for, but one he could not turn away from. The day stretched on as they walked. The path wound through hills covered in silver grass, through rivers that sparkled like glass, through valleys where mist clung to the ground. Everywhere the human led, his eyes scanning, his steps certain. At night they camped beneath the stars once more. The girl fell asleep quickly, her head on the human's arm. The mother sat across the fire watching him. "You could leave tomorrow," she said. "You could walk away and be free of us. Why stay?" The human looked into the flames, his face lit with orange light. His voice came slowly, rough as stone. "Because I am already free. For the first time, I am not alone. The mother's breath caught. She had never expected those words. For so long he had been a shadow, a silent protector, a blade in the dark. But now she saw him as something else. A man who had carried too much pain, finally finding a reason to live. The forest whispered around them, carrying his words into the night. The next morning they reached the edge of the forest. Beyond it lay open land, stretching far toward mountains that glowed in the distance. The journey ahead would be long, dangerous, and uncertain. But it was a path forward. The mother looked at the human. If we continue, there will be no turning back. He adjusted his pack, his weapon resting across his shoulder. His eyes, sharp and steady, met hers. Then we do not turn back. The daughter laughed, skipping ahead. Her small voice rang out in the open air. Together! The human's lips curved just a little into a smile, and so they walked. 3 figures on a broken world, a mother, her child, and a human once lost. They carried no banners, no armies, no glory, only scars, silence, and the fragile thread of trust binding them together. But sometimes the smallest bonds are the strongest shields. The forest faded behind them. The mountains ahead called like a challenge. And above, the stars watched in silence. The mother thought of the day she had screamed for help, certain no one would hear. But someone had, a human, a stranger, and now, not a stranger anymore. She whispered under her breath, words only the wind could hear. Sometimes the most alien heart is the most human. The human walked ahead, leading them toward the horizon. The girl skipped beside him, laughing, and for the first time in his long, lonely life, he felt something he had forgotten how to feel. Home.